Sweet music, ooh, you hear it in the air, swinging and swaying, and record playing, dancing in the streets. Well, that's what we should be doing, rather than crying and moaning and being upset. Let's go dancing in the streets. I love to dance. I'm a dancing fool. Oh, about, let's see, 2014. That's like 5 years ago. I uh, I was really sick, and I was in Florida, and I was staying with a friend of mine, and he's a Rasta, a real Rasta, Jamaican Rasta, and he's been in America most of his life. He came here when he was a little boy with his family, and they were in Florida. And if you go to one of my earlier YouTubes, he and I, you know, we were in this hood called Port St. Lucie, and it had been one of the great locations of the Shetland circuit. There's a lot of black culture there, and but over the years it kind of gotten, gentrified, and all the really good parts of just they got squeezed and squeezed and squeezed into this what was, the replica of New York City's Alphabet City, between US 1 and 95, and one side of the city, and to the next township, there was, Avenue A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and kept going. And the streets were like one, like I said, from US 1 to 95. And so on the other side of 95 was the town, and it was totally touristed out, and it was on the Intercoastal. They had a bridge that went over, and as you went over, there was this gigantic shit factory, big, zillion gallon tank where all the crap went into, and they aerated it, did all the stuff, but which way the wind blew. And he went over that, and there were all these condos along the ocean, very Disneyized, right? And it was all very, very, very white. And that was for about, I don't know, 6 miles. And then there were these great pine forests, which was what Florida was. Why Florida isn't like just what it is, a big sandbar, is that these pines gave it life. And this was one of the last parts of the east coast of the Intercoastal where this forest still existed, and it was beautiful. And guys like me and other bohemians would go out there and camp, and you could drive. They had all these like little mud roads that you could drive into, and no, as the cops would drive on US 1, you know, we couldn't see it if you drove deep enough in it. And they built nice, there were loads of campsites, and they let it because on the other side was the Intercoastal, and all the guys who were fishermen would, come from wherever they had their little boat moored, and they would, go and fish, and they had these little camps where they'd hang out. So for, traditionally, the powers that be kind of let those people do that because they were white men, right? And so as economic times got worse and worse, the '08 collapse didn't happen, in '08. It happened started in 1970, 72 with the oil embargo, and it just kept going. Detroit, New York City. You look at all the where did all those cities that had the big racial brouhahas. It wasn't just they had already passed all the bills. You already had great society. What the real issue was economic, The globalist agenda was being played out. Agenda 21 was being played out, and it is being played out right now. And it's pretty hard to embrace what is being told to you as a great economic thing for all the people, when really it's just, you know, the rich people. And there was enough crumbs, in the trickle down agenda that enough people, like I said, you have that top of the pyramid, the owners, right? And then you have the next part, the managers, and people like, the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, they're managers. They aren't the owners. And then below them, you have the worker drones, right? And that's the lawyers and doctors and judges and politicians and, the owners of their little businesses and big businesses and the guys on boardrooms and the guys who, control, the media and the banking. And that's the worker drones. And then everybody below them are the expendables, the people who work in the factories, the guys who are the doctors and nurses, work in the emergency room, the firemen, the policemen, the consumer class. They are the expendables because their whole society, their whole reason for living is to expend the consumables, to keep the fluidness of the economy going. So, but on the sideband of this is always the artist in the first person, the savage. And that's me, baby. I am the artist in the first person. I am the savage. I'm the person. I don't serve the consuming society. I can consume. I have an avatar right here. This is my avatar, and I just had a breakfast. I consumed it. My phone is leaned up against a bottle of ketchup. I consumed it. Here's a cup of coffee. I'm consuming it. Within the construct of the illusion, and if you're in it, you're consuming. So there's not much I can do about that. But I can be awake. I can be, the artist in the first person. And as in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, when I was, the artist in the first person in New York, people would, oh, you're an artist. And I would give them the rift about, no, I'm a savage. What's that mean? Well, I'm a master. What does that mean? So what? When I do electric work, I'm doing it as art. When I'm doing my healing arts, that's art. When I'm a writer, that's art. When I'm an actor, that's art. When I'm, all the things I do, it's art. Everything brushing my teeth, it's an art, And so the general public can't understand that because they're in such a box. They're not only, the sense of separation, why we feel alone, is because we're in this little capsule called our avatar, this little bag of water here. And it's like a prison cell, like what's his name calls it up, we're in a prison planet. Well, we are, And until you wake up, until you're awake, conscious, that's why I'm the dude awake, Go to the dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? Go to my my blogspot, X-rated, XRATTED .blogspot. Anyway, it's moving towards 10 a.m.-ish. It's going on 10 minutes. And basically, someone commented that, oh, don't be upset or down. No, I'm not upset because I'm alive, I'm dancing in the streets, right? So I was camping out, and I used to go to my friend because he had his wife and he had kids, and his band and everyone kind of lived in a compound, give or take. It's like a bunch of these old funky Florida houses in the midst of the hood in, Alphabet City. And back in the 60s, the black folk ran that community as a community, right? And an eco village, and they grew their own vegetables, and they fished, and they had their own economy, and their school. They had a great school, and when in the 70s and 80s they built the make believe Disney World along the beach next to the shit factory. On the other side of this bourgeois community on the beach was a nuclear power plant called Turkey Point, and it couldn't have been more appropriately named because it was Turkey. And the guys who ran it were totally morons. And the guy who was in charge, who was head engineer, he was husband of a friend of mine's sister, and my friend who was talking to me on the phone one day. Oh, you're down there? My brother-in-law, he's over there, and he's always complaining he can't find really good help. Well, you got, man, the pedigree. You worked on that stuff. You worked on Los Alamos, San Diaz. You just go. I'll call him up. I'll get you his phone number. So my friend called him up. My, you know, I made an appointment. I went there. I gave my credentials. He checked me out. He said, "Oh yeah, we can hire you. We need a guy like you. So why don't you come over and see us?" And so you could never see the plant because they had berms, on US One. Good AM, Sensei Bob. Hey there, Jane. And talking about my living in Florida near Stewart. And I was on Jensen Beach, and I had friends, Rasta friends, who lived in a compound in a place. I forgot the name of it, but they had a reggae band, and they were painters. And they were these people. I'm talking about dancing in the street, and being an artist in the first person, and being a savage of love's co-creation, right? So, and these guys were it. And between Port St. Lucie, that's the name of the place. From Port St. Lucie to Jensen Beach, there was this pine forest that had been Florida. Just amazing. All of Florida with these great trees. And then they cut them down, and because you know what the largest export from Florida is? It's not oranges, it's not vegetables. It's sand for concrete. Florida has the best sand. And that's why Florida's having all of these sinkholes. It's not like, because they dredge out the beaches, right? And they kind of pour water in and suck it out like with a vacuum cleaner. And then the sand from, the nearby gets, because it's all Florida is like a fluid thing. So it kind of just flows back to the beach. So that's why there are so many sinkholes. How did that happen? Well, because they've taken half of Florida's sand out for concrete all over the United States. Anyway, and I was camping out in these forests, and I was friends with. I can't remember the guy's name, but he had a Rasta name, and he had a reggae band. And I'm talking about dancing in the streets, and this is 2015, and I'm really sick. I used to be, guy had some money, was always there, could always help them, always support them, take care of things that they couldn't, right? But then I got really sick, so I was living out in the forests, and back in the day, the powers that shouldn't be would let people camp there because the people camped there were white, male tourist fishermen, right? And so they never bothered you. But when the economy started going south, and the big crash in '08, it really started in 1972. So, more and more people were living in those forests. And so if you ever seen the movie They Live, every couple times a year, the highway patrol and the SWAT team would go through and just, it was like pushing the cockroaches out. They would just, and guys would be killed and shot and set on fire. And I had friends, because I was working for the Desperate Lawyers, who would give me the heads up. Hey, they're thinking about, and so I would, tell everyone who was living in those squares, hey, you better get out of here. Well, I had no place to go. Anyway, so one of those times, I almost had no place to go, right? And so my roster friends, coffee, they, oh, you can stay with us, because they had this compound, 4 houses, and a garden. And if you go to one of my earlier, in April, May, I put up videos of me living with the Rastas, right? And I was their manager, you know. I was, and no cream, Mrs. Moon, I'm good. Just the coffee. Thank you. No cream. I'm good. So I basically was living with these guys, and if you go watch the video, you can see how we lived. It was like pretty, as artists, real artists, the Savages, right? And we were co-creating with love. I mean, Ade, that's his name, and his son was named Prophet. And anyway, and he had a beautiful wife, and the community was great. And the powers that be kind of left us alone, because we would go in the middle of the hood, and I would start a little fire on the sidewalk. And I had a metal plate. I put the metal plate down and start a fire on it, and we would sit around and drum, and do, ceremonial drumming. And I would do, shamanic ceremonies, and it would mellow out the whole neighborhood. Crime would go down by 80%, and the police, you know, kind of got on. I went and talked to them about, hey, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be a ceremonial thing, and da 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 da, and it'll melt, and dancing in the streets, and we did it every, I think, Thursday, and we did that because we'd have gigs Friday and Saturday, and we would do that to tune up, shamanically. So when we would perform, and we would go perform, I got these gigs in really fancy bourgeois marinas and gated communities that were on everything that was on the water. We, did these things on the water, between, Jupiter, which is where the Bushes lived, and up to above Jensen Beach by a few towns. And we did some things in Daytona and over there in Disney World. And I would be, I put on my, manager hat and, make the contacts and be the white guy and say, oh, we're going to do this. And I would have tapes of our music. But when we came in, we were like, bohemian savages. And majority, 98% of the time, people were just enthralled. So every Thursday we'd do this ceremony. And the first time I went to the cops, I said, hey, listen. And they said, well, that's when people start. We get about 3 or 4 shooting deaths every Thursday. I mean, that's. I say, I know, that's why we're doing this. And after we did it the first time, and their statistics went through the floor, they said, oh, wow, this is, the chief said, hey, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So every Thursday we would do that. And there was an artist kind of collective in the middle of, it was an old phone building. And I went in there and spunked them up. And we started doing shows every other week, on Wednesday. Well, no, we should do it. No, I said, no. Everybody's doing stuff on the weekend. Wednesday, there are a load of people who want something to do on Wednesday. So we would do that, and the reggae band would play there. And that was like, a practice. And I got the collective to throw the band a little money. Anyway, so if you go back, you will see me and Ade. And we were, his little piece of temporal palace was this garbage pit between this house and an empty lot. And we would sit there and make fire and play music and talk. And then late at night, he had a blog, and we'd do a radio show. He'd play music on his computer. He would use the keyboard as he was a really smart guy, a really smart guy. I mean, he knew about all this before, and I would just be me. So go look at those and tell me what you think. I mean, you know, it's still there. No one's taken it down yet that I know of, but it's kind of in the beginning. I mean, if you were to go all the way there and kind of look at the pictures and see the one, the guy with the dreads, with the tam on his head, take a look at that one. Then start looking at the ones on either side of it. And good morning, Sarah Webb. So I'm talking about living in Florida along the Atlantic coast, the east coast of Florida. I'm talking about dancing in the streets. And I was living in near Jensen Beach, near Stuart, Florida. And that's where all the big money is. Everything people think about Miami or Fort Lauderdale or, Jupiter, where the Bushes and all the people have. And if you go to Jupiter and go on the island, it's really bizarre because it's like the Bohemian Grove. Now, Bohemian Grove is over there in California, and that's like their clubhouse, their summer camp. And yeah, Sarah, but Miami, the thing about Miami is it's the only place that has eternal gridlock of automobiles. And it's a fun place to visit. But when Miami was really a fun place to visit was in the 1950s and 60s. My parents had a house down there, and it was great. I mean, our house, alligators and turtles would just do right through our house because we had this house that was right on the beach, Pompano Beach. We were right on the beach. And years later, 20 years, 30 years later, I went looking for it, right? And our house was it was US 1, our house was right on the beach. And, I went looking for it and I couldn't find it because they had filled in the beach for a half a mile. So my house that had been on the beach was now on the other side of the highway in like a crummy neighborhood. Anyway, back in the 50s and 60s, that's when Florida was really, well, because of Purdue chickens and Purdue hog farms, both the East Coast and the West Coast are covered in red tide, and people are dying. Right now, they're having this thing called community pneumonia, because both since the oil, catastrophe in 2010, it killed, the East and Gulf Coast to the point in a certain energetics that everything is, yes, red tide. Yep. I mean, it's everywhere. So, and that is carrying biologics that are killing everyone. The animals, all our relations, and we're part of it. If you go up to areas where, like above Disneyland, up, towards Alabama, that whole part of the coast there, Tampa, all of that. It's like, go look at the statistics of pneumonia. It's like off the chart. If you go look at everything from Kennedy Space Center down to Miami, the statistics because all of that farm waste goes into the lake, comes down this waterway, and then goes west and east into the Gulf and into the intercoastal. And it's really bad. It has been really bad since 2002. I mean, they would have little blips of it since the 60s, but since 2002, each side is just nonstop, and you can't even go on some of those beaches. Go on the beaches. You can't even go on the beaches You can't put your toe in the water or you get, like typhoid or plague, and no one's talking about this. And the biggest economy is, or the second biggest economy is the tourists, not the chicken farmers, but the chicken farmers are owned by Purdue and the hog farms are owned by Purdue, who has some serious political pull. They don't even get sued, right? Anyway, you should go look at the videos of me with Ade. It's the beginning of my series. And if you kind of flip through all the shows that I've done towards the beginning, last night, no, last night. Well, I look forward to, so Ink, did you see the photos? Yes, you did, right? Yes. So, I dug through and I got them and I kept it. And tonight I'm gonna, it's take 3 of the old crone, right? So, go on Dancing with the Stars. So this is where that story is, Dancing in the Street. So we're doing the drum circle, the fire right in the middle of the hood. The gunshots are everywhere, and we mellow that out. And before I did it, I went to the police and said, "Hey, we're going to do this. It's a cultural event. And they go, I don't know. There's going to be a lot of shooting there every Thursday." I said, "Well," and it dropped like a stone. People just came out, and instead of shooting each other, they danced to the music. So by the third night, we had hundreds of people, and the people and the we started around 7, 8 o'clock when after 6. That part of town was like a war zone, so nobody went out on the street. It used to be the downtown business district of the black community, and it died. Anyway, so we did this every Thursday, and the people would come out and dance, and and so within a number of weeks, there were food trucks coming up there and giving food, and then some of those food truck guys had money, so they said, "Wow, I can rent this whole old restaurant for like $300 a month." Oh, wow! So within a month, we had 4 or 5 stores in that, and then the store started selling not just food, but vegetables and stuff like that. And there was this old place that had grown plants for developers, right? And that was just laying low, and a nursery. And so we went up there and started growing food that we were selling in that time. Anyway, so for 2 months, this was like going off the hook. So, and I'm just getting sicker and sicker, and really like, oh wow, and I could barely walk, and I had, I went to Goodwill and got myself a walker, and got these plastic, kind of clamps for my legs so I could stand up. But it didn't stop me, I just kept moving forward, and having a great time, and doing shows, and drumming in the streets every Thursday, and that's what kept me alive. And so so and I was the manager, and I would make all these shows, shows that the band would go play on Friday and Saturday night for rich people at their gated communities, and we would show up, and all the guys would be, in dreads, and at Rasta Boys, and me, Grandpa Smurf, and I remember being at the really fancy schmancy gated golf community in Jupiter Island that George Bush and his clan, that was their Florida place and had been forever. Anyway, we show up there for a Saturday night gig, and they're like, right, we set up, and they have all these white people in their nice Florida dress, right? And they're having their dinner, and we come out, and we get on there, and we play really beautiful, quiet dinner music, and Ade's great on the piano. He's great on everything. and he is playing like Tony Bennett music. These people are like, right? And so, 9 o'clock comes, and that's when the plays get playing, and everyone's drinking their single malt scotch, and the music is that's when the dance music's supposed to start, and the rich people go out and dance. So they start playing reggae music, and nothing, political or just reggae music, and so no one's dancing. So I get up with a walker and my legs booted, and I do a Fred Astaire, and my walker is my Ginger Rogers, and I just start just pirouetting around there, and everyone is, and I'm going, and the prettiest girls I can see at the tables, the women about 28 with their sugar daddy about 80, I go and grab them and pull them up and dance with them, and then, once I swung them around a little bit and they were smiling, I'd grab the old fart and get him up there to dance with them. And, anyway, so I, do that for about 20 minutes, and everyone's dancing, and now, everyone's like grooving to the dancing in the street, right? But it's in the middle of a gated community country club dance hall. And I kind of, I mean, the pain is amazing, and and I'm sweating, almost blood, and I kind of, go to a table and sit down, and the manager, who's a black Jamaican woman, comes over and just hugs me, and she's crying. She goes, "That was amazing. You're just like my grandfather." And she just, whatever you want, we can play here all. I don't care what these farts, you're. So for the winter of 2005, that's where I was. And I was, going downhill because I was getting no real medical anything because we had no real money. And the doctors there, I went to some of the doctors that took care of my parents because I knew them. And they were just pill jockeys, They said, "I don't know, you know. So that's what kept me alive, dancing in the streets, dancing, doing a drum circle on Thursday in the middle of the worst gun violence it was like worse than Detroit, worse than Chicago. I mean, every Thursday night, 3 people or more died, So anyway, so it's 32 minutes and 47 seconds. So the place is filling up, and so I'm going to move on to my next spot at here at 33. No, I'm not. I'm gonna see what you guys have to say. Jane, dancing brings things.
I want like a 7 egg
I asked again.
Well, here it is. Saturday. Maybe I'll start a little early. Okay, because half my audience is all over the world. I mean, Buddy, he's there in New Zealand, and it's like 3 a.m. And so maybe I'll start a little early. But the other thing is, I'm up at the school. I try to get a quiet spot. So maybe 6. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. But definitely by 7, right? Or maybe a little earlier. Yes, there are many smells. But, the thing that always makes me feel rich is my heart and my love for you guys. My grandma gave me 28 rules to live by. And one of them was to always live like a millionaire, but don't be one.
Yeah. How many eggs?
How many eggs is in the morning?
3.
I want 6 eggs.
6 eggs.
Yeah, maybe 7 eggs.
Okay. What over on
Yeah, living with the Rasta in their compound in Port St. Lucie was way fun. It was real. Whereas, amongst the really super rich and powerful in Jupiter Island, not so real. That's right. The old crone knew about me just like the Aborigines in Australia. They knew about me. They were contacting me in my dreams years before I showed up. You know, me and meeting Donna on the subway, meeting Neil in the middle of, Times Square with Tony Two Toes. Okay. Okay. Well, 7 it is, maybe sometime between 6 and 7 to nudge a little bit more away from midnight. And as always, you can go watch me anytime you want, And you can, you want to be part of the chat, get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And whatever you guys could send my way via Western Union, and that's Al, Martino, in Roanoke, Virginia, and then send me the tracking number. A number of you have done this already, and thank you very much. And a number of you have sent me beautiful things in the mail. My P.O. Box 1165, Vinton, Virginia 24179. Vinton, Vinton, Virginia, USA 24179. P.O. Box 1165. So I would love it if anyone could help me out. I mean, the universe is always helping me out, but a little bit of help is always good. What else can I say? So go forth and dance in the streets every day in every way. Take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. Remember to visualize your Akashic record, your library, the sanctuary of your own choosing. Remember to practice going into state. And all of you guys who are part of the chats, you can always visualize, like me. After I do that chat, I kind of go to sleep and I go right into state, and I am in my sanctuary of my own choosing, and I'm going back to whatever place we were visiting. So, and that's the beauty of this technique. I can go to the old crone in my dreams anytime I want, day or night. Just have to go there with me now. And every day and every way, take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation. As was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Hear our prayers. Be with us. Let us in every day and every way take the peace of the earth and make it stronger with love's co-creation. And the sun is coming out. Look at that. I love you guys. It's 39:27. I'll keep talking until 40:40. And I love you guys. You're the best. I'll see you tonight, sometime between 6:30 and 7 p.m. And have a good day, a good night, a good dream time. I'm with you always. You need anything, get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. The Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Go read my blog. And it's set up to be a publishing house. You know, I need some help with all this stuff. So, and that is xratted.blogspot.com. Okay, it's 40 minutes and 13 seconds. So I love you guys. I'll see you soon. You stay well. 21, 22. I'll see you tonight between 6:30 and 7 p.m. And it'll be take 3 of the Old Crone. And you know, she wasn't she was a human being. Like, go see the movie Doctor Strange and look at the ancient one. That was the Old Crone. But she wasn't as ancient as that girl. I mean, she was still a woman, you know. I love you guys. Catch you later. Well, go to it, Inc. I love you, buddy.